Namaste, Pranam, Gita Dhyana. Om Parthaya pratibodhitam bhagavata Narayanena swayam vyasena gratitam Purana munina madhye Mahabharatam Advaitam Ritavarshinim Bhagavatim Ashtadashadhyayinim Bhattvāmanusandadhāmi Bhagavad-gīte Bhavadveshinim. Oh, Bhagavad Gita, with which Lord Narayana himself gave enlightenment to Arjuna. The ancient sage Vyasa included it in the Mahabharata. O goddess, showering the nectar-like knowledge of non-dualism contained in your 18 chapters. O my affectionate mother, the destroyer of rebirth, I meditate upon thee. Krishnavantana. Vasudevasutam devam kansachanuramardhanam devakim paramanandam krishnam vande jagat. O son of Vasudeva, the slayer of Kansa and Chanur, extreme delight for Mother Devaki. O Krishna, supreme teacher of the universe, my salutations to you. And after Sri Krishna has told Arjuna and of course told us about the wonderful cycle of events that has been created by the Almighty, by the Lord, which has emerged from the Brahman. And in the last two verses, Krishna has explained to us that how from Brahman himself have come out the Vedas. From the Vedas has come out the karma allotted to everybody. From karma results the yajna. From yajna comes the rains. From rains comes the food. From food comes the life force. So this entire cycle that has been created with a specific role of everyone fitting into that cycle of everyone has to perform karma, and through the karma has to perform the yajna, the sacrificial acts of giving up. And that is how this entire cycle progresses forward. Now, what happens if there is somebody who doesn't try to follow this cycle of action? So, this cycle that has been set into motion by the Lord himself. It has originated from the Brahman. What happens when somebody doesn't follow this particular practice? So Sri Krishna tells about such people. Evaṁ pravartitaṁ chakraṁ nānuvartayatīha aghāyur indriyārāmo moghaṁ pārtha jīvati. Now Krishna is telling Partha that evaṁ pravartitaṁ chakraṁ nānuvartayatīha. Yaha is iha. Iha is here. Yaha who. Now Sri Krishna is telling about such a person. Yaha iha na anuvartayati. He who does not follow. Na anuvartayati. Na is not. Anuvartayati is follow. Follow that particular path set to him. He who does not follow. He does not follow what? Pravartitaṁ chakraṁ. This chakra, this wheel of action, karma, which has been set into motion, which is set revolving by whom? None other than Brahman. He who does not follow this particular cycle, the wheel, which has been set in motion here very much on this earth. He who does not follow. what happens of such? Aghāyur, living in sin. Aghāyur, ayuhu is living, agha is sin. He precisely he lives his entire life in sin. Indriyārāmo. Ramaha is enjoying what? Indriya. Rejoicing, enjoying in the senses. Moghaṁ jīvati, O Partha, moghaṁ is in vain, useless. Is what? Saha jīvati. He lives for nothing. He lives for no good. Moghaṁ, in vain. His life verily becomes in vain. So Krishna says, he who does not follow on earth the wheel, the cycle, thus revolving, which has been set in motion, he who does not follow this wheel, who does not fit into this wheel of action, sinful of life, and rejoicing in the senses, he, O Partha, lives in vain. Vain is his life, who does not fit into the things which have been put in motion by Brahman. Now, everything has got its own, the frequency of cycles. Now, if somebody doesn't fit into that, he or she, that person, he becomes kind of out of the motion, out of the cycle. And if somebody finds he is not fitting into that cycle, well and good. At least that is okay. But rather than fitting into that wheel of action, rather than fitting into that particular motion that has been set, remain aloof. But if one gets involved in sinful acts, if one gets involved only in rejoicing the senses, then that life really is of no use. Because that is going contrary to what has been planned for all the living beings by Almighty. All the lives have been planned. But if somebody wants to get away from that plan, from that SOP, the standard operating procedure, then first of all it is harmful. And instead of following that particular path, if one gets into sinful activities, if one gets into the tendency of only rejoicing the senses, then indriyārāmo, then that life is of no use. The wheel of nature is set up by the Lord for nursing, training, disciplining, and finally elevating all beings at various levels of existence. That is the purpose of the nature. That ultimately we are all heading towards our salvation, we are all heading towards our liberation. Sometime or other in this huge cycle, we will get away from it. We will get away from this cycle and become liberated. But it won't happen if, contrary to trying to get away from that cycle, we end up in getting into the mode of delusion and getting deluded by the senses and the sense objects. We get into the enjoyment part of it. A pupil who declines to be educated does not derive the benefit of his being schooled. A visit to a town is as bad as no visit if the visitor fails to see or do anything there. Now, this is exactly the wonderful example Swami Chidbhavananda ji has given. Say a devotee of the Ramakrishna order goes to Calcutta, and For any devotee, for that matter, for any devotee, going to Calcutta means there has to be visit to Belur Math, Dakshineshwar. And what happens? If a devotee, a hardcore devotee goes to Calcutta and just comes back after seeing some other, which is that Princep Ghat or something, and the other tourist attractions, and just comes back. What is the use of that devotees going to Calcutta then? It is as good as, I mean, he has just wasted his time going to Calcutta and not even gone and visited the places which he is so much interested in. What's the purpose? So, if the purpose of our life is to attain something, is to fit ourselves into this cycle of action, the chakra, the motion wheel that has been put in motion by Brahman. If that is our purpose, if that is what we are supposed to do, if we are failing to do that, and instead we are getting ourselves engaged in all those useless enjoyments of the senses, of the sense objects through the senses, then our life is as good as of no use. Like the devotee who has gone to Calcutta and without seeing the places of his real interest, he has just seen some other, places of tourist attraction and come back without even visiting Belur Math, Dakshineshwar, Kashipur, Danbati, and all those Mayarbadi. And what is the use then? So, that is what Sri Krishna is telling. That the Brahman has created this wheel of action. He has put it in motion. Every living being contribute his or her or its role as per designed by the Lord. But if somebody doesn't do that, and instead he wastes his life in incurring sins, in enjoying the sense objects through his senses, then that life is absolutely in vain. Again, he has to come into that cycle of birth and death, birth and death, birth and death, because he's not doing the duty that he's supposed to do. And that is what Karma Yoga teaches us, that once we have got anything on our plate, we must finish that duty. We must do that duty wholeheartedly, sincerely, tenaciously. So that is Sri Krishna's caution to people who are not inclined to follow the set of actions what they are to do, and instead they deviate from that pattern. In fact, for that matter, even remaining actionless would be far better than getting into the sinful acts and getting into the enjoyment. But then, as Sri Krishna has said, nobody can remain actionless. So either better you mold yourself getting into that action which is come to your Lord, rather than sitting idle or wasting your life in doing no good things. So that was the 16th shloka of the Karma Yoga that we have read today. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Sri Krishna Arpanamastu. Jai Sri Ramakrishna. Jai Thakur. Jai Ma. Jai Swami.